Charlemagne sword, her epic tale is penned into court, to campaigning we shall go. Whoa! May well the weather may change and bring us storm, wind, hurricane strange. High, low, the years may age, to campaigning we shall go. To the north, to the south, to the east, to the west, the Charlemagne sword did adventure best. Young caravanners will write the rest, to campaigning we shall go. Huh! Soon the revolution will fall, the serpent's head crushed, with tail it on. Sound the angel's trumpet call, to campaigning we shall go. As a band of brothers that confronted liberals and made them shudder. Face to face we made them stutter, to campaigning we shall go. Drag queens, BLM and socialists, abortionists, trans and Satanists, Pacha, Mama and progressivists, to campaigning we shall go. Whoa! Soon the revolution will fall, the serpent's head crushed, with tail and all. Sound the angel's trumpet call, to campaigning we shall go. Head crushed with tail and all. Sound the angel's trumpet call, to campaigning we shall go. Soon the great chastisement will come and end the rule of Satan's scum. Some and all the angels come, to campaigning we shall go.
Some men beg to stay behind to guard their earthly pleasures, while others left to heathen lands to fight for heavenly treasures. A glorious tale throughout the land, a valiant feat, a lesson of Charlemagne and knightly peers when treason did aggress them. They rode out of Frankish lands with mighty steeds in armor, Roland and his bravest knights who fought at Roncesvalles. At a distance from their king there trailed the faithful warriors. Roland and his peers did pass by canyon rocks and boulders. Saracens in ambush charged by treason, was it triggered? Sword and shield in battle clashed, the faint of heart would wither. Overwhelmed in numbers great, the warriors fought on bravely, dealing mighty blows and prayers, saying, "Strengthen us, O Lady." Roland fought a valiant fight, as flies he dropped their numbers. All his men did give their all, their blows as sounding thunder. And there approached to roll inside his excellency Turpin, who with his mace dealt swiftest blows to hardy enemy soldiers. The bishop said, "We die this day, good Charles cannot be seen. My son, for thy imprudence we now with our lives must pay. Yet valiant now, O men of light, behold I now absolve. For all thy sins one penance told, go strike the enemy cold." this the bishop struck as enemies fell in waves, and in his wake of swings and breaks was struck by enemy blades. Oliver said, "Roland, now 'tis time to call the emperor." Then blew his olifant, he did his temples burst asunder. Now it seems we meet our end, may God receive us surely. For him who hung upon the cross we die, and this is glory. And on the wind a distant sound had reached the ears of Charles. 'Tis Roland and his olifant, to war we fight with honor. Sire, do wait, for this could be merely a false alarm. Silence, says he to Ganelon, these words can only harm. Bind this man, this traitor, I'll deal with him in time. It seems that silver won his soul, till treason be his crime. Then charged great Charles with army strong to crush that ambush brazen, and aid his nephew's faithful band to battle did they hasten. A mortal blow did Roland take, therefore he would expire, but not before giving crushing blows to the enemies of his sire. When towards the last he raised his eyes, a knightly angel shone, Saint Michael, who would bear his soul and take to heaven's throne. When at last the emperor rode through battlefield now hushed, and in his grief saw Roland pass, yet enemies round him crushed. My lord, look hence far distantly, and see the enemy fleeth. And all did hasten to the chase with blazing indignation. And as he rode, great Charles saw the sun begin to set. Yet prayed to God the sun to stop, lest justice not be met. And surely did the sun hold place as God heard Charles' plea. The distance closed upon his foes, who lost all means to flee. As thunder clashed, the battle shook the earth unto its depth, and all who escaped the sword took swim, yet drowned by river swept. And as the final foe gave cry, when Charles's sword he met, the heavens shone in a brilliant sky, and then the sun did set.
Welcome to your Catholic Drive Time.
Keeping you informed and inspired.
We love God, we ought to be able to talk about Him.
Getting you started on your day.
With the latest in breaking news and information.
From the Vatican to the White House and everything in between.
It's serious, it's fun, it's your Catholic Drive Time.
Now here's your host, Joe McClain.
Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to Catholic Drive Time, keeping you informed and inspired. I'm your host, Joe McClain. So good to be on with you on this Tuesday, September the 13th. Praise be to God on the memorial of St. John Chrysostom, Bishop and Doctor of the Church. It's going to be an interesting show today. Coming up at 35 past the hour, Ben Bergquam from Real America Voice is going to be on to talk about an actual war on our nation's border. I'm not just like a hyperbole or, talking points of cable news networks. I'm talking actual cartel fire bases on our border. Actual combat going on our border. Ben Bergquam is coming up at 35 past the hour to share that with you. At 15 past the hour, Brent Haynes is going to be our guest. He is our in-house attorney, freedom fighter, Catholic evangelist and speaker. And we're going to be talking about these agendized curriculums that we're finding across the nation. I mean, who knew that the librarians were the ones you had to watch out for most? We're going to talk about that at 15 past the hour. It's kind of scary what's going on. Also, so many stories in the news today. According to a 2022 MCCA survey, most major cities in America have experienced up to 50% increases in homicides and a roughly 36% increase in aggravated assaults. So there's that. Hey, Christian bakers who were slammed with fines and ultimately lost their business because they refused to bake a cake for a gay wedding. Well, they're taking their case all the way to the Supreme Court. Brent Haynes says it could be the religious liberty case of our lifetime. So we'll have to wait and see for that. On Monday, just yesterday, Twitter has covered up a video that showed parents what the obscene pornographic materials are being offered in the libraries of their public schools, and their kids are exposed to it. Twitter said you're not allowed to watch that. Americans in 2021 once again spent more on average on taxes than they did on food, clothing, and healthcare combined, according to a recently released data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. All good news today. Good morning to Rudy Carlos.
Good morning, Joe. And to balance out your bad news that you started off with,
what are you talking about?
I have a couple of good news stories, so I'm looking forward to telling you about that. No puppy dogs. I refrain from doing puppy dog stories because, people know that I'm biased.
You're an angry person?
I love dogs.
Because you are bitter and jaded?
Yeah, that I can't have one. Or that I can, but I wouldn't put one in my carpeted apartment.
I've got 3. Would you like one?
I'd love a
3?
Dog. Let me have one.
You can have them all.
I'll take them.
They're yours. Done.
Yeah, and then I can eat them later. Never mind.
What? Good morning to you, Adrian Fonseca, hanging out on the ones and twos again.
Well, speaking of good news, guess what I did last night?
Sleep.
Well, I suppose I did do that.
You got a dog.
I did not get a dog. I watched Rings of Power.
And your thoughts?
Well, episode 1. I watched episode 1.
And your thoughts? No after show today, so you got to tell us.
It is exactly what we talked about. It's so my theories on Galadriel were so much worse than I thought, because it's not just that she's leading a battle or anything like that. She's the main character.
Yeah.
She's the driving force of the story.
Yep.
And she leads, and she's just she's just a very attractive man. That's all she is. That's all her character is. Huh. And it's like nothing about her is feminine. And it just drove me nuts the whole time. I was like, this is, even if this was not, I was like, oh, if this was I don't know, some just not Lord of the Rings based movie, maybe it'd be enjoyable. It wasn't enjoyable, even if I just pretended that it wasn't Lord of the Rings. It was just not good.
Wow.
But the acting was fine.
Okay.
The cinematography was really cool, very nice. And the music was great. So
really? And the music was great. Well, they spent, I can't remember how many millions, hundreds and hundreds of millions just to produce this first season.
Yeah.
They're expecting to spend $1 billion total over 5 seasons.
That's insane.
Yeah.
It's not going to make 5 seasons.
What could we do with $1 billion? Just imagine.
Tell you what,
buy a dog.
I wouldn't do
buy
that.
the finest pedigree.
Well, praise be to God. If you missed our conversation yesterday about the Rings of Power, check out our podcast feed at grnonline.com/CDT. We are in the midst of Share-a-thon week here at the Guadalupe Radio Network, so our second hour will be pushed back to 9 a.m. Central, 10 Eastern. If you want to join us, you can always join us on our website at grnonline.com/CDT. But we have a full lineup for you this hour, and we're going to pray and we're going to get into it. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thine intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, I fly unto thee, O Virgin of Virgins, my mother. To thee do I come, before thee I stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not my petitions, but in thy mercy hear and answer me. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. Now your headlines for Rudy Carlos.
Good morning. Thanks for tuning into Catholic Drive Time. Today is Tuesday, September the 13th, and here are your headlines this morning. From LifeSite News, over 80% of German bishops present approve Synodal Way text calling for women's ordination. The members of the Synodal Way Assembly approved a document calling on Pope Francis to allow women's ordination. Nearly 82% of the bishops present voted in favor of the document. The heterodox text calls for a reassessment of Pope St. John Paul II's magisterial document, Ordinatio Sacerdotalis, in which the Pope confirmed that the Church's constant bimillennial teaching was an exclusively male priesthood. And Breitbart reports over 75% of plastic in Pacific garbage patch is from Chinese and Japanese fishermen. A Dutch nonprofit group called the Ocean Cleanup released a report earlier this month that found the bulk of plastic debris in the so-called North Pacific garbage patch, I didn't know that existed, consists of discarded fishing equipment from Japan and China. The garbage patch is often depicted in Western media and popular culture as a refuse created by heavy industry or thrown into the ocean by careless Americans and Europeans. Much of the trash heap supposedly consists of minuscule debris called microplastics. And the Epoch Times reports 40% of Americans believe the Chinese Communist Party considers itself at war with the U.S., according to a poll. More than 40% of likely U.S. voters said that they think the Chinese Communist Party considers itself to be at war with the United States. Less than 26% said the CCP doesn't consider itself at war with the United States, with more than 34% unsure. The survey, conducted by the nonprofit Convention of States Action and polling company Trafalgar Group from September 2nd to September 5th, polled more than 1,000 likely midterm voters across the political spectrum. The poll had a margin of error of 2.9 percentage points. And The Hill reports Biden to sign order boosting biotech as part of a cancer moonshot update. President Biden on yesterday, will announce the director of a new agency focused on biomedical innovation and sign an executive order on biotechnologies as part of an update on his administration's efforts to cure cancer. And those were your headline news this morning. God love you.
The saint of the day is Blessed Bertrand of Garrigou. He was born at Garrigou in the Diocese of Nimes, France in 1195. Bertrand was a secular priest under the Cistercian missionary and an ardent opponent of the Albigensians when he first met St. Dominic in the party of Bishop Diego. Bertrand may have been one of the one to recruit Dominic in the battle against the French heretics because they worked closely together in this mission for the rest of their lives. Bertrand joined the first Dominican friars by receiving the habit at Toulouse in 1216. Dominic left him in charge of the community when he traveled to Rome to seek papal approval of the order. Bertrand's zeal and experience played an important role in the founding of the friar preachers. When the brothers were sent out in little groups on missions, Bertrand was left in Paris with Matthew of France, where he helped to form the Dominican tradition of learning and govern the first foundations at Paris. While Bertrand's advice and prayers helped to establish the order, he is best remembered as the closest friend and traveling companion to St. Dominic, until he was appointed as provincial of the province. He witnessed the miracles and heavenly favors bestowed upon his friend and provided us with insightful testimony about the heart and mind of the founder. Bertrand himself was credited with many miracles both during his life and after his death. Others considered him a second Dominic in austerity and holiness. but he humbly overlooked his own claims to sanctity and his loving insistence on those of his friends. Bertrand was preaching a mission to the Cistercian Sisters of St. Mary of the Woods near Garrigou whenever he fell sick and died. He was buried in the Sisters' cemetery until the frequency of miracles suggested that he should be given a more suitable shrine. His relics were lost and shrine destroyed during the religious wars, but pilgrimages were still made to St. Bertram's Cemetery until the time of the French Revolution. He died in 1230 in Les Bourgs, and he was canonized by Pope Leo XIII, or rather beatified, in 1881. Blessed Bertrand of Garrigou, pray for us.
Praise be to God in all things. The gospel today comes to us from Luke chapter 7, verses 11 through 17. Jesus journeyed to a city called Nain, and his disciples and a large crowd accompanied him. As he drew near to the gate of the city, a man who had died was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. A large crowd from the city was with her. When the Lord saw her, he was moved with pity for her and said to her, "Do not weep." He stepped forward and touched the coffin. At this, the bearers halted, and he said, "Young man, I tell you, arise." The dead man sat up and began to speak, and Jesus gave him to his mother. Fear seized them all, and they glorified God, exclaiming, "A great prophet has arisen in our midst, and God has visited his people." This report about him spread through the whole of Judea and in all the surrounding region. The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. According to Ignatius Catholic Commentary, Nain is a small Galilean village about 6 miles southeast of Nazareth. It is not otherwise mentioned in the Bible. Very interesting. Small town stuff going on here. Haydock's commentary, quoting Melodontus, says, "It was very proper that Christ should work this miracle just as he was entering the city, that he might preach the gospel with better success, from the opinion that they must form of him after beholding so great a miracle and so great a favor bestowed upon them." In other words, maximum impact, shock and awe. Mystically, according to Ignatius Catholic Commentary, quoting from St. Ambrose, the widow signifies Mother Church, weeping for those who are dead in sin and carried beyond the safety of her gates. The multitudes looking on will praise the Lord when sinners rise again from death and are restored to their mother, which reminds us of the pain and suffering that we have put Our Lady through, who is seeking to help mother us into salvation itself. Our Lady of Sorrows coming to mind. Touch the bearer. This was also very interesting commentary out of Ignatius Catholic Commentary this morning. It says, a shocking gesture that the Lord would touch the coffin. Although the Mosaic law warns that contact with the dead renders Israelites unclean for an entire week, Jesus reverses this expected outcome with his powerful word, arise. By bringing the dead to life again, he eliminates the very cause of legal defilement and therefore is undesired and its undesired effects. Jesus elsewhere raises Jairus' daughter and Lazarus as signs of the Messiah's arrival. That's Ignatius Catholic Commentary. But again, there's parallels here to Elijah, and that's why they're calling him a prophet, not only giving the son to the mother, but other indicators here. Maximus from the 5th century said, "But it is worthy to remark that 7 resurrections are related before our Lord's, of which the first was that of the son of the widow of Sarepta in 1 Kings 17, the second of the Shunammite's son in 2 Kings 4, the third which was caused by the remains of Elisha, 2 Kings 13, the fourth which took place at Nain, as is here related, the fifth the ruler of the synagogue's daughter in Mark 5, the sixth Lazarus in John 11, the seventh at Christ's passion, for many bodies of the saints arose, Matthew 27. The eighth is that of Christ, who being free from death remained beyond for a sign that the general resurrection which is to come in the eighth age shall not be dissolved by death, but shall abide, never to pass away." I mean, do you need a sign? An evil generation seeks a sign. Prove to me you are God. But rather we must seek our Lord in faith. because even though he asks us to seek him in faith, he has provided so many great wonders, miracles, and signs, to include the Holy Eucharist, which is a daily miracle. Let us pray, fast, and do penance. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Men, it's time. Participate in the next National Men's March to Abolish Abortion and rally for Personhood on Saturday, October 15th, 11:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. in Boston. There is a man connected to every abortion. Men are a big part of the problem, and it's time for all men to take responsibility and be a big part of the solution. All men of goodwill are invited to participate in the march, and everyone else is needed to show up for the rally beginning at 2 p.m. outside of the State House. For more information, go to themensmarch.com and spread the word.
It's often said that people can engage in whatever sexual activity they please as long as it doesn't harm anyone. But is this a sufficient moral criterion for evaluating sexual behavior? I don't think so, and here's why. First, it begs the question against the natural law moral theory, since if the natural law approach is true, then sexual acts that the natural law condemns as immoral would be harmful to a person's moral character. Second, although it's true that we should avoid inflicting unnecessary harm, it can't be our only moral criterion. For if it were, then we'd have to say a person's intent to murder or rape someone is morally permissible as long as he doesn't carry it out. But that's absurd. Avoiding unnecessary harm is a part of a good moral theory, but it's not enough. I'm Carlo Broussard with the ready reason for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to Catholic Drive Time, keeping you informed and inspired. I'm your host, Joe McClain. So good to be on with you. Praise be to God. Coming up at 35 past this hour, Ben Bergquam from Real America's Voice, he's a reporter there, is going to be our guest. He shot some footage, insane footage of these cartel fire bases at our border and how they're at war with each other down there. They practically run sections of our border with no opposition from our side whatsoever. They get to run with immunity. We're going to have that conversation with Brian Bergquam at 35 past. Stick around for that if you can. There are lots of stories that are circulating today that are of great concern to us, and I'm sure they are to you. Joining us right now via telephone is our good friend Brent Haynes, attorney, Catholic speaker, freedom fighter. Good morning to you, Brent.
Good morning, Joe.
Praise be to God. It's good to have you on. I saw a story today that really was disturbing. Yeah, I texted you about it. And this Catholic Vote reported on this. There was an ad that was trying to be run in Michigan. And the ad's purpose was to reveal the level of pornographic content that's in public schools in Michigan and how parents don't even know it's happening. And Twitter banned it yesterday. They won't allow it. And I clicked the link to watch it, and I saw half a second, and I had to turn my eyes. It was really graphic and disgusting. But what's more disgusting to me is the fact that librarians were allowing this in public schools, and apparently this is a trend happening all across our country. What can you tell us?
Well, there are some things that, believe it or not, Twitter should ban. But isn't it interesting that something that Twitter finds offensive is available in the public schools? And unfortunately, this isn't new. The New York Post reported just recently on the radicalization of librarians, and specifically school librarians. And they reported on a man named Ron Kleinman, who has a website or a blogspot website called Safe Libraries. Every parent out there who uses a library or who sends their children to a school with a library should look into this for themselves, Joe. The librarians have just become, another part of this effort to radicalize and to educate or some would say brainwash our society's children. We've talked in the past, just in the last few weeks, about school districts that promote what they call gender-affirming and trans-affirming care, and will even deceive parents about whether or not their children are engaging in gender transition. We've talked about how school districts around the country have adopted curricula that they call gender affirming, but which is really an advocacy of what is called queer theory. Well, today we can talk about what's going on in the school libraries. The New York Post reports, for example, that the newly elected head of the American Library Association is a woman named Emily Drabinsky, who describes herself as a Marxist lesbian. Now, lest people think that you and I are being overly dramatic or overreacting, let's just consider what she says in her own words. She says, "I just cannot believe that a Marxist lesbian who believes that collective power is possible to build and can be wielded for a better world is the president-elect of @ALA Library. I am so excited for what we will do together. Solidarity, ! Close quote."
Wow.
She also says, "The consequences of decades of unchecked climate change, class war, white supremacy, and imperialism have led us here. If we want a world that includes public goods like the library, we must organize our collective power and wield it. The American Library Association offers us a set of tools that can harness our energies and build our capacities." Another library leader involved in with librarians is a woman in Chicago named Fabozi Ettar. She says, "Librarianship is not the last bastion of democracy. It is not inherently good and sacred. It is an institution, and like other institutions, it is riddled with white supremacy, racism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, and so on and on and on. This is who we are," end quote. Joe, we could spend the entire hour just talking about, the information this man puts on his website, other information out there. But the libraries have already started to gain some attention because of the drag queen story hours for children that have been sponsored around the country. One of the earliest ones was one just 2 blocks from where I live.
Wow.
And they have books in the libraries, such as This Book is Gay, Genderqueer, Lawn Boy, and it's not just the public libraries. Parents need to be checking the libraries at their schools also. And this is not new. This goes back to back at the end of the 1980s, a book caught a lot of notoriety. It wasn't the very first book, but there was a book that some people might remember if they were engaged back then. It's called Heather Has Two Mommies, and you can infer what it is about. Well, the American Library Association gave that book an award. So this is nothing new, and you won't be surprised, Joe, but the American Library Association in the late 90s began getting funding. And I'll give you 1 or 2 guesses as to who started providing funding for the American Library Association.
Yeah, yikes. I'm afraid.
Yeah, George Soros. Soros.
That was going to be my first guess, but
yeah,
yikes.
George Soros and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Absolutely.
So people, parents really need to find out if they're at the library, what's going on at their library, and what books are there. And this isn't even talking about pornography or even pornography available to children.
Well, I would say that video that was detailing pornography in public schools, that was pornography. I mean, like I said, I watched about a half a second. It was a political ad that was saying, listen, in your public school, this is happening, and the governor is allowing it. That was the premise of the political ad, which Twitter banned. But when you actually look at the content, it's straight up porn.
Well, this is in line with the overt sexualization of children as young as 3.
Yes.
Earlier this summer, you've covered the issue of how Disney Entertainment has become woke. Parents should go and look. You can look on Facebook. Go do a search term for Disney drag brunch. These are brunches, held in restaurants or bars that are Disney themed. Well, they will advertise at least some of these as being for all ages. A sheriff in the greater Dallas metro area caught some attention the last few days because he said he would not provide sheriff's deputies to provide security for the event, and there had been some protest about having the event, and so the bar canceled it. And I am not at all advocating any kind of physical activity or disruption unlawful activity in that respect. That's not necessarily the way we want to go about this. It's not the way we want to go about this at all. But the people in that community caught on and were upset because it was advertised at least as being for all ages. Well, remember, what's the theme of this? Where's this coming from? Walt Disney.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So parents really need to be alert about what's going on in the curriculum in their schools, the thinking of their teachers, and what's in the libraries. Project Veritas is a series of videos where they go undercover as investigative journalists and get people to speak about what they really think and what they really do. They uncovered an assistant principal in Connecticut who is on video saying he will not hire a Catholic teacher. Will not hire a Catholic teacher, and he doesn't like to hire older people over 40, if I recall correctly, because he wants younger, because they're too set in their ways, and he wants younger people because these are basically his words, they're better at conveying to children a more subtle Democrat message. But there's another teacher that they just caught on video who's supposed to be teaching English to middle school students, and she goes on about how she spent 2 months teaching young students how to organize, how to protest, how to do it strategically, how to throw bricks, how to be smart, and how you don't throw bricks in your own neighborhood, but you go throw bricks at the people who are the problem.
Oh, I think in that video she also explained how she had the kids rewrite the words of the Pledge of Allegiance. And so that was obviously very concerning.
That's funny because I got in trouble when I was a kid for throwing rocks.
Did you?
And now they're encouraging throwing bricks. I should go to school now.
Yeah, you were just born a little too early.
Yeah, it is very concerning.
For you. If you go out and buy a black mask, there's still hope for you at the next Antifa riot.
Right, then I can live out my dreams of throwing rocks.
These are.
I said this actually a year before last. I was giving a talk at a religious freedom conference here locally, actually. And I said one of the opening lines of my talk was, "They're coming for your kids." And that is a very shock and awe statement to make. Everybody feels like that's a little hyperbolic.
Only the gay men's choir said it. Or saying it, rather.
Well, the gay men's choir did say it.
I mean, you had Planned Parenthood who was actively targeting grade school, middle school kids, trying to win their hearts and minds before they even get to high school so that they can mail them the RU48 pills. They don't have to even come into their clinics anymore. We had that conversation about where those chemicals and the aborted babies go during that. They go into your water system. Tragic story. It was a horrible conversation to have, to be honest with you. Then you've got like the gay choir. Was it San Francisco or is it? I can't remember. I think it was San Francisco saying, yeah, that we're actually coming for your kids. But then you see stories like this about teachers all over America, librarians all over America. Not every teacher's bad. There's some great teachers out there, and I know them. When I talk to them, they shake their heads. They're not sure how much longer they can hold on into this system because they want to do good. They love the kids they teach, and they're trying to teach them well. But they're in a system that seems like they're outnumbered and overwhelmed because there is clearly an agenda going on, and parents can't drop their kids off anymore. It's not a drop-off program. You have to be thoroughly involved and aware of what your kids are exposed to because it seems like they're exposed to insane things at very early ages.
So aware that you might as well just homeschool.
Almost. Now, that's not an option for everybody. There's a lot of parents who are just they don't have that option. They have to send their kids to school, whether they want to or not. And for them, my heart grieves. I want them to have better options for their children. And it seems like how hard would it be if you're a single mom right now and you have no choice but to send your kid to their local school because you can't afford better for them. There's no voucher program that allows you to send them to a better school, for instance. And you're working all day, but trying to burn the candle at both ends in order to make things work, and your kid's exposed to some pretty insane things. These are difficult days, aren't they, Brent?
Yeah, it's a somber way to begin the morning, Joe, but it just shows that you really have to just to be on alert if you're a parent or if you're otherwise concerned about the state of our society because of the way they're educating our children. And you said it. Parents can't just drop their kids off at school anymore. It's not like it was when you and I went to school.
Yeah.
Parents really need to be involved. And like you said, you take a single parent who's already very busy, how do they even have time to check out what's going on in their schools or what's in their library?
Make those parent-teacher meetings.
To be done.
Yeah, exactly. Review the content your kids are being exposed to. Homeschool if you can, but wow. All right, Brent, God love you, brother. I know you're filling in for me on Monday and Tuesday, so we'll see you then. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. We're going to talk about the border.
Hi, this is Pam Stenzel. Come participate in the next National Men's March to Abolish Abortion and Rally for Personhood on Saturday, October 15th in Boston. Men gather outside of the Planned Parenthood on Commonwealth at 11:30 a.m. for the march, and then everyone else show up at the 2 p.m. rally outside of the State House, where I'll be speaking about the need to value and protect every preborn baby from fertilization. For more information, go to themensmarch.com and spread the word.
This is Dale Ahlquist with a Chesterton Minute. Have you ever heard someone say, the Catholic Church is too condemning? It needs to practice more tolerance. G.K. Chesterton says, the other word for tolerance is indifference, and the other word for indifference is apathy. The Catholic Church cannot afford to be apathetic. It cannot afford to be tolerant of evil. It has to be consistent in opposing what is wrong and defending what is right. And the Church especially cannot afford to tolerate social evils that are condoned by the state. Why? Because sooner or later, it'll be turned against the Church. History has shown this to be true more than once. Chesterton says there have been times in history when the Church has been wedded to the world, but it has always been widowed by the world. Want more than a minute? Chesterton.org.
Welcome back to Catholic Drive Time, keeping you informed and inspired. And now more headlines from the Epoch Times. Headline goes, the government is not your friend. The founder of True the Vote discusses being targeted by the FBI and the IRS. She says, quote, it was a nauseatingly clarifying moment. Like, just in case you thought it was enough to cheat him out of an election, no. They want him gone. They want him indicted, unquote, Catherine Engelbrecht said on recent events surrounding the Mar-a-Lago FBI raid. The raid reminded her of her own dealings with the government agencies and galvanized her resolve to continue speaking about election integrity. Engelbrecht became involved in election integrity after she volunteered to work the polls in Texas in 2009 and noticed procedural problems she felt should be addressed. She started True the Vote, which grew in national election integrity movements, and True the Vote is an investigative group behind the documentary of 2,000 Mules. You can watch a recent interview we did with her on Catholic Drive Time on our YouTube page. Breitbart reports, Tennessee girl's lemonade stand raises $10,000 for brother's treatment. 2 years ago, Mackenzie Evans' brother, Gannon, was diagnosed with cerebral cavernous venous malformation. Sorry, I'm not a doctor there. A condition that gives him lesions on his brain that could rupture at any moment. As a result, Gannon experiences daily seizures. In May of this year, doctors told the Evans family that Gannon now has a 10-millimeter tumor on the top of his brainstem. And after going to 5 different pediatric neurosurgeons at different hospitals, all doctors said it would be too risky to perform a procedure to remove it. Thankfully, the Evans family found a clinical trial that uses radiation therapy at Boston Children's Hospital, but it would come at a large expense. While the family's insurance agreed to cover a large portion of the expenses, the family still had to raise $22,000. Now, Mackenzie, who wanted to help her younger brother and her parents with the expenses, decided to open up a lemonade stand, and the results have been very successful. After holding 15 lemonade stands, Mackenzie has raised over $10,000 for her little brother. When asked why she was doing this for Gannon, she said that older sisters have, quote, big responsibilities, unquote, and that she has to help mom and dad sometimes when they really need it, and she really wants to help her brother when he's sick and hurt, Mackenzie said. And Not the Bee reports, Planned Parenthood annual report shows abortions went up while other health care services declined. And those are your headline news this morning. God love you.
Praise be to God in all things. Thank you, Rudy, for keeping us up to date. Just want to remind you that today is Share-a-thon week. It kicks off Share-a-thon week across the Guadalupe Radio Network, which makes me want to say, hey, listen, it's super important that you support your local Catholic radio station. You know, whatever station you're listening to right now, they need your help to not only survive it, keep the doors open, lights on, Catholic radio waves flowing through your neck of the woods, but to thrive. Like, is our goal to just get by, or is our goal to to crush it in the name of the Lord, right? To share the good, the true, and the beautiful, to have important and candid conversations at a time where the world seems to be going crazier and crazier. I get up 3 a.m. 5 days a week. We all work very hard here, keeping a track of the news, keeping the pulse, so that we can try to bring you this information with a timely guests and all of it. Help us to do that. To support your local Catholic radio station really does make a difference. And the GRN will be kicking that off at the top of the next hour. For those that you can join us, you can always hang out with us on our website at grnonline.com/CDT. Our second hour, if you would like to join us for our second hour, that's going to be at 9 a.m. Central, 10 Eastern. We'll live stream it again at grnonline.com/CDT. But I think it was like the week before last, Rudy, that I sent you this video.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It was
video.
Crazy. So Ben Bergquam is he's a journalist, a reporter with Real America's A Voice. And I saw this video of him down at the border, and it just makes your blood boil, to be honest with you. Like, listen, I am passionate about people who need and seek a better life. I'm not up for doing that in an illegal way. There should be legal remedies, and we should make those legal remedies efficient as is possible. I don't think we have. No matter who's in office, Republican or Democrat, I don't think that much matters. It seems like nothing much changes whoever's in charge. But nonetheless, the border's out of control. And this is not good for anyone. Not good for anybody looking for a better life, and it certainly ain't good for our country. And to see this video that I saw a couple weeks ago is just absolutely insane. And he joins us now by Zoom chat. Ben Bergquam, good morning to you, sir.
Hey, good morning, guys.
Praise be to God. We're very grateful for your time this morning being on with us. So like I was just saying, I just saw this video that you put out down at the border. And I serve in the Marine Corps. So to see actual fire bases on the tops of hills, like, I know a lot of veterans, if they saw this content, they would say, oh, is that Afghanistan? Is this wartime footage from Afghanistan? Because it reminds people of that. Tell us, what did you see?
Yeah, I was down there, and thank you for having me on, guys. I was down there with Tim Foley of Arizona Border Recon South. I was in Arizona, south of a little town called Arivaca, which basically is a cartel town for all intents and purposes. You know, there's a lot of patriots down there too, and so I know there's folks in that town that would disagree with this. But you go south of that, between a little town called Sassabee and Nogales. A lot of people know Nogales, Arizona. It's where President Trump had built a long section of the wall. That wall ends after Joe Biden took office. He stopped building the construction down there, and we went down with Tim Foley of Arizona Border Recon, spent 3 days down there. And I'd been down there before, and during those times, you go to the tops of the mountains on the U.S. side, and there are cartel scouts and lookouts that watch for Border Patrol coming in and out their movements so that they can control the routes. And this is not just Arizona, this is all along the southern border. You have cartel members in America, occupying American territory and controlling the drug routes, and now the human smuggling routes, which have become as, if not more lucrative to the cartels than the drug routes. This was the first time, though, that we actually saw occupied bases. Basically, they're forward operating bases for the cartels. They are on the Mexico side, but they go right up to the border where the wall ends. And what we observed were heavily fortified, well-funded, heavily armed bunkers with Mexican nationals and members of the Sinaloa cartel. And actually, what's interesting is there are two sets of bunkers. One with stone. They've basically created exactly what as you mentioned. It looks like a wartime base. It looks like a dugout for Overwatch, and there's two of them. With it, what's been happening? It's basically as after El Chapo left, two factions of the cartel have been warring. It's the El Mayo and the Chapitos. It's basically El Chapo's sons and then his brother, and they've been fighting for this territory because it's so lucrative to them. And what looks like has happened is the El Mayo sect has taken out the Chapito in order to Again, that's just based on the intel that we're getting and watching some of this back and forth. So one of the sets of bases has been blown up, burned out. I couldn't tell if there were any living or any bodies down there. There were no signs of life. The other is manned by, there's at least 10 bunkers. They're covered. They've got tarps over the top, but they've got stone bases all around the bottoms. But each one of these guys are walking around with AK-47s. They occupy it 24/7, and that's one of the things people don't understand is when we're battling this, you've got Border Patrol who basically doesn't go to where I was. I was right on the edge of the border, standing. I could have walked, another 100 feet. I was in Mexico, and I didn't see a single Border Patrol. We found a group of illegal aliens as we were driving in there the first day that said they'd been waiting for 2 days, hoping that Border Patrol would show up. They were giving up, and They hadn't seen Border Patrol. And so this is an area as Tim calls it, no man's land, but it feels like it no longer belongs to America. These guys control it. They operate at will. There's nothing stopping them. The Mexican government is doing absolutely nothing to stop them. And we're doing absolutely nothing to stop them. And really, as you mentioned, you were in I think you said the Marine Corps, but there's so many that have fought for this nation. I get to do what I do because of the sacrifice of so many others. And I go down there and looking at this and thinking about the fact that we're sending billions of dollars to Ukraine to secure their border, but yet we have terrorist drug cartels on our border occupying it and running their drugs and their slaves at will. And that's what's happening right now. So you can see that. It was actually in our last episode of Law and Border. And you can see that at americasvoice.news or on our app, Real America's Voice News app. And we went in there and showed it. These guys are in there. They've got AK-47s. They come in. And then we also have trail cam footage. Tim Foley has trail cam footage of the trails that we were actually on. And this is the worst part. So you've got the cartels, and they do what they do. They're criminal enterprises. They're actually highly sophisticated. The operations, the logistics on these operations are incredible when you think about what it goes into it. Taking people from all over the world. We have 151 different countries coming in. They're basically travel agents to the world now. They've got people coming in. I was down in Panama a couple months ago in the Darien Gap, and every country you can think of, down to Ethiopia, Africa, a country I'd never even heard of before, coming through and then coming up and all coordinated to where they're going to be heading. But on these same trail cam videos, we have armed cartel members, the same guys that were up on top of the mountains that we observed, come into America. They walk down the same trails onto these smuggling routes and up into the pickup point. So either they're going to drop off the drugs and take those further inland, or they're going to drop off the people and sometimes slaves. We actually witnessed one of the videos had a guy with his hands tied behind his back. It looked like one of the crews.
Hold that thought right there. Sorry to interrupt, but we're up against a hard break here for the network. Ben Bergquam is our guest, Real America's Voice, and we're talking about the border crisis. And this is very, very difficult to swallow, considering how many people have served our country and are passionate about our sovereignty. All that and more is coming up next.
Hello, this is Steve Gleason with your one-minute tool for Catholic evangelism. Here's the question for your non-Catholic friend. At your church, there's probably some great music, enthusiastic clapping, and maybe even a shout or an amen. But where's the church-wide act of contrition and the confessing of sins? Well, here's your 3 best friendship tools for Catholic evangelism. Number 1, the Bible and the church. Psalm 47 does declare, shout unto God. It does say, clap your hands, all you people. But there's one more highly valuable physical expression. Strike the chest. What's that? 3 times your fist strikes your chest for external admission that my sins were my fault. Secondly, order of the Mass. Within the first 60 seconds of a Mass, the congregation says together, through my fault, through my fault, through my most grievous fault. Each of those are followed by my firm strike upon my chest. And my take out of Luke 18 says, but the corrupt tax collector dared not even lift his eyes to heaven as he prayed, but beat upon his chest in sorrow. Proper order is confession before praise, sorrow before joy, and this makes sense. Why? Because remember what Mom said, dinner first, then dessert, so don't forget to strike. Find me online at Smarty Pants Catholic Evangelism.
Hi, this is Father Stephen in Barado. Join us in Boston for the next National Men's March to Abolish Abortion and Rally for Personhood on Saturday, October 15th. Men, we will gather outside the Planned Parenthood to begin the march, and then we're going to meet everyone else for a 2 p.m. rally outside of the State House, where I'll be speaking about constitutional personhood for the preborn and where we need to go from here. For more information, go to themensmarch.com. Again, details, mensmarch.com. Join us and spread the word.
Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to Catholic Drive Time, keeping you informed and inspired. I'm your host, Joe McClain. So good to be on with you. Ben Bergquam is our guest, Real America's Voice reporter, talking about the war, the actual war happening on our border, not just hyperbole or tough talking points from a conservative, show on cable news. No, we're talking, this is the real thing. And it's very disturbing. Ben, welcome back to our show. When I was a kid, I had a friend who was full active duty Army, but he was assigned to like a National Guard unit, and they worked on the border. And they patrolled our border, locked and loaded. They cammied up. They hid in the bushes. They tracked these runners coming across the border. And then there was one occasion where they tracked somebody down and actually engaged in a firefight and got in trouble over it. That used to happen. It doesn't seem like that's happening anymore. Right before the break, you were describing how not only do they have scout snipers on our side of the border, they got bases on their side of the border. They're running across our border drugs, human trafficking, and I guess they're even their enemies, which you said somebody was handcuffed in one of these trains, and no one's to stop them. No one confronts them. Nothing.
Yeah, other than in that case down there where we're at, Tim Foley and his group. That's why he's down there. He's a private citizen. He was a veteran as well, and he saw what was going on, and so he's got a group that goes down there and they patrol it, and they actually go up and into these places and catch some of these guys, and will then turn them over to Border Patrol. But other than that, you have very few Border Patrol resources. The sad thing is, coming out of that same town, Arivaca, and really the hub is in Tucson, Arizona. You've got these organizations, leftist organizations. One of them is called No More Deaths. There's a church, Good Shepherd Lutheran Church, that's a part of it. They're called Good Samaritans, and it's the worst. It's as Christ called them, synagogues of Satan. You've got organizations that pretend like they're doing good, but really all they're doing is aiding and abetting the cartels. They actually go down and put on the exact same trails that the cartels are using to smuggle their drugs and their people and their slaves. They go down and they rehydrate, they refortify, they put water, food, blankets, and we've witnessed the cartel scouts coming off the tops of the mountains, going down, resupplying, going back up. The people that are using these trails, going and resupplying. So basically, rather than actually doing anything to stop them, and at the same time, our Border Patrol resources that would be there have now been pulled off to go man places like Yuma and Eagle Pass and Del Rio, where we have these massive groups of fake asylum seekers. They've learned how to game the system because they've been taught by these same leftist NGOs like El Otro Lado, Pueblo Sin Fronteras, Centro Sin Fronteras, and sadly, the Catholic Charities. There are many organizations that have basically, they use the 501c3, they use their nonprofit status, and they're aiding and abetting the invasion of our country. And I do want to qualify that too. There are a lot of good people that think that they're doing good. I talk to people all the time. I interview them, and I went to this Good Samaritan Lutheran Church, and I was asking them, and they believe that they're doing good. They're just ignorant to the fact that what they're doing is actually aiding and abetting an invasion into our country.
So Ben, that's a really good point. Obviously, there are a lot of people who think they're doing good, but in reality, they're causing great harm. They say the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
But what happens with the people who are turned over to the Border Patrol? I understand reading about this. Their numbers are stretched really thin. There's even division within the ranks, between the rank and file and the leadership of Border Patrol. What happens to these people? Does anything of value happen to fix the situation?
Well, that's it. It depends on the situation and who the people are. Obviously, if they are cartel members, if they've got warrants, if they have a criminal history, if they have charges in the U.S., they will be prosecuted, hopefully in the United States. Otherwise, they hopefully will be deported. But what we're seeing and talking to I've got undercover Border Patrol contacts that send me information all the time, and we're hearing that not just so. What the people that are staying are the people that claim asylum. Basically, if you come across and you say asylum, I fear for my life, you get a golden ticket, automatic entry into our country. You get a little white piece of paper that says find an ICE agent within 60 days, turn yourself in, and we'll begin the process of going to a court within 5 to 7 years. That's how far backlogged these guys are now. But what we're being told is, what we know is Joe Biden and the left are they're dismissing most of these cases. Most of the cases of the people that had been caught under President Trump, they've dismissed almost all of those cases.
Unreal.
And they're in the process of doing that now. So it's a de facto amnesty, what's happening right now. And within 5 years, those people will be able to vote. The ones that Tim Foley and these guys are catching, a lot of them are simply let go. A lot of times Border Patrol doesn't have the time to go down there. They, if they don't get to them in a certain amount of time, they just have to let them go. And this goes for law enforcement as well. You've got these guys, once they get past the point where we were at, they get in a vehicle, they take off to either Tucson or Phoenix or, out to Chicago. A lot of them are going to Chicago, all over New York, everywhere. If they get caught by law enforcement doesn't have the authority most of the time. In Arizona, they can't even charge them with anything. And so they have to wait for Border Patrol. If Border Patrol doesn't show up, they have to simply let them go. And that's what's happening every single day all across our country. So to put it in perspective, illegals, 2 million came across and were caught last year. Border Patrol tells me they're only catching about a third of what's actually coming across. We're on track to hit 6 million this year, by the end of this year, with last year and this year. So you're talking millions. You're talking a large city the size of Los Angeles, if you take the gotaways, that have come into our country illegally, that are all going to be a drain on our resources, our healthcare, our education system, our welfare systems, all of that. But that doesn't take into account the fact that we've already caught 66 on the terror watch list. It is suicide of a nation that we are doing. We are committing right now on our border. And the saddest part is we knew how to fix it. President Trump created the blueprint on how to fix this. The first one, we had years, Republicans and Democrats going back and forth, pretending that they cared. No one really ever did anything. Republicans liked the cheap labor. Democrats wanted the easy votes. President Trump came along, like him or hate him, whatever. He actually created the policies that actually fixed this, creating the Remain in Mexico policy, holding Mexico accountable to it, and forcing people to wait in Mexico for their asylum claim. Because if you come up and you've been told that you get automatic entry, but then all of a sudden you have to wait in Mexico for a year, we know 90+% of these cases would be dismissed if they were actually adjudicated. That was the most effective policy we've ever seen. That's all we have to do. But instead of doing that, Joe Biden and the open borders leftists out of Washington, D.C. they're incentivizing more of it.
I think every point you said could have a follow-up to it, but we have about 5 minutes left in our conversation. And I just wanted to take a step back into what you were talking about earlier about some of these organizations, some of these charities that are involved here. And could you expound upon that a little bit more? What is going on with these charities? You said most of them are like, they seem to be just trying to do good, and they're not aware that they're feeding the problem.
Or they don't see the connection to the greater problem.
Right, or they don't see the connection to the greater problem. Yeah. So what exactly is going on with some of these charities, especially for our relevance? I mean, I'm very concerned about the Catholic ones.
Yeah. And I'll say this, most of the people involved in them, the people that I've interviewed, seem to think that they're doing good. The people at the top know exactly what they're doing. This is a money-making operation. It's a globalist. There's a whole group of people around the world that don't believe in borders. It's the globalist mindset of no borders, no walls. They go around chanting no borders, no walls, no USA at all. They're radical leftist communists. And a lot of these organizations, Catholic charities including, have been infiltrated by people like this. And they make millions of dollars. And it's actually the part of it is dereliction of duty by the federal government. They've created this ability. So this is something that should be run by the federal government. These operations, when people come in, we have facilities. The Border Patrol used to operate these facilities, and ICE used to operate these facilities. They've created contracts to give these to private organizations, nonprofit organizations, and that does a couple things really bad. First off, it takes away our ability to look at the books and look at the operations. So we can't go in with if it was run by a government, we could get a freedom of information, go to FOIA, and go in and find out what's exactly happening. When we ask Secretary Mayorkas right now, where these people are going, how many are being released, how many are being released into our communities, he comes and says, well, we don't really know. And the reality is he doesn't really know, because he's handed most of these people off to these NGOs. They are making the NGOs. They are awarded grants through the federal government, which is our tax dollars, to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars every single year of our tax dollars go to these operations. Probably the most egregious of them is the unaccompanied minors program, the refugee resettlement program. It's all underneath these umbrellas, and there's about 7 major organizations: Catholic Charities, Lutheran Charities, the Jewish Charities have a similar one, and they all fall under this umbrella. And they get all this money from the government. They process these people. And during COVID, what was crazy was, as you and I were being locked down, they were operating at will. They were buying up hotels. They were putting people in these hotels and simply letting them go. The worst case, though, is these unaccompanied minors. What we're being told, I have confidential informants within some of the organizations that are telling me under President Trump, they had to do background checks on the parents as well as the people living in the household that they were going to send the children to. Now they're not doing background checks on any of them.
Wow.
And the only thing that stops them from handing these kids over to the person that says that they're their parents is if the child themselves say, I'm being abused. We're watching right now the largest human trafficking operation in, I would say, world history.
Yeah.
It is modern day slavery, and it is being done with our consent.
Yeah,
and that's the worst part about this whole thing.
It is utterly tragic. That part alone really gets my blood boiling, to think that we are standing by and watching so many people be, we're not talking about just indentured servitude. We're talking about actual slavery here. Yes. And it's happening in our communities, and we are not doing what's necessary, let alone preaching against the cooperation with coyotes. These people are giving thousands of dollars to these people who will rape and pillage them and leave them for dead in the back of a semi-trailer in San Antonio, for instance, at their earliest convenience. This is something we should never support in any way, shape, or form. But we're just about out of time right now. Ben Bergquam, Real America's Voice reporter, I'm grateful for your time today. I wish this was an easier story to take, but an important one to expose and to let people know about. God bless you, Ben. Thank you for your time.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys.
Check them out, Real America's Voice. You can see their YouTube channel for sure. Great content there. But that's going to do it for today in hour number 1 of Catholic Drive Time. Please keep that situation in your prayers. There's so much that needs to be fixed there. But coming up after this break in the Guadalupe Radio Network side is our fall Share-a-thon. We'd love for your support, but always support your local Catholic radio station. If you want to join us for hour number 2, 9 a.m. Central, 10 Eastern, go to grnonline.com/CDT. That's grnonline.com/CDT. God bless you. God love you. We'll see you back then.
Hi, this is Terry Beatley. Come participate in the next National Men's March to Abolish Abortion and Rally for Personhood on Saturday, October 15th in Boston. Men, gather outside of the Planned